Hello lads and lasses, TRZ Plays here, and today I'm going to be doing a tutorial video on one of, if not my favorite premium battleships that I currently own. The Imperator Nikolai the First, or Imperator Nikolai I if you're Russian. So, what is so special about the Nikolai? Well, if you look at it, it has a style similar to Russian Gangut class battleships. Well, it's not the case. It's not a modernized Gangut, it's from a different class. It's a modernized Imperator Maria class battleship. Well, it was actually a separate class of ship, but then the whole thing with communism happened, leading to the ships being postponed and sent off for scrap. So yes, in theory, Imperator Nikolai is a ship that technically existed because the hull was built and it was almost complete. I mean, you could make the same argument for Montana as well. So, the Nikolai, well, as you could probably tell, it's probably a similar gun layout as Gangut and the Imperator Maria. The only exception, which makes it a modernized Imperator Maria class battleship, is if you look at the turret behind the bridge. It's not facing the funnel, like a Gangut class battleship would. It's instead facing the bridge, like what an Imperator Maria class battleship has. So, overall, this is not a Gangut. Don't call it that. It's from an Imperator Maria class, which pretty much has the same turret layout. So, enough about the history and the design. Let's look at the armor. So, if you look at the armor for the Nikolai, it's not that bad. And being at tier 4, it actually has one of the thickest, if not the thickest, superstructure, even though it barely has any, at 400 millimeters of armor. And just for that one tube alone, it's pretty much more armor than the entire ship. And if we're going to look at the vital parts of this thing, well, as for typical Russian battleships, if we take away every single area, it has quite a sizable citadel. I mean, if you look at it, it probably carries Gangut's citadel. Well, maybe not that ridiculous, but probably does. I mean, we can't make a comparison with Imperator Maria because it's not in the game, so this is our only representation of it. Its citadel, it's okay unless you're literally up next to someone. And Nikolai tends to face tier 5s a lot more. This thing could face Ismail's and New Mexico's. So, your side armor is pretty much laughable. Now, besides the armor, now we're going to talk about the commander. As a commander, I prefer to use Mikhail Kedrov on most of my battleships, but we decided to go for Lev Galler this time. Inspirations are Andrew Cunningham and Charles Madden, and our skills are Flammable Cannoneer, Gyrating Drill Bits, Collective Labor, which is a skill only found on the Russian battleships, and Reaching Out XXL. For our legendary, we have Will to Rebuild. Now, the reason why I have Charles Madden instead of my usual Robert Jejard is because this thing already has very good pen. But its turrets turn like bricks. So I decided to go for Charles Madden. Eventually, this build could also help you out with the higher tier Soviet battleships, most preferably Vladivostok and Sinop. But I'm going to recommend another build for you guys. In case you don't have Lev Galler, you could go with a Mikhail Kedrov build. For example, you go into Mikhail Kedrov, Robert Jejard, and Andrew Cunningham. This time I put Robert Jejard because of the already fast traverse speed for the turrets, which means Kedrov in himself comes with a skill that already makes your turrets turn faster. Then we have Not One for the Nuisance, which reduces the risk of catching fire or flooding. Crisscross, main battery traverse speed again. Collective Labor, that's a must for all Russian battleships. And Reaching Out XXL. And of course for our legendary tier, we go for Will to Rebuild. So arguably, if we're going to put these two together, chances are Kedrov seems more appealing. But I'll go for Galler still, because Galler is basically a step in teaching you how to play the higher tier ships. Now, we've seen what the ship is capable of, but we need to know the upgrades. So for the upgrades, which Nikolai, thank Christ, only has one, it has aiming systems. Now, I got the aiming systems one over the secondary battery and main battery reload. I mean, this one's obvious, because this isn't a German battleship. These aren't technically meant to brawl. You can make them brawl, but the problem is with the citadel that big, you're bound to get nuked. The main battery mod is because of that plus 5% main battery reload time. The problem with that is Russian battleships tend to take 7 years to reload, so it's not really worth it. In terms of guns, again, the problem with the guns is that they're very underwhelming at 305. But it's tier 4, so you shouldn't be complaining. The reason being is, even here it says this ship has modest guns. It pretty much has the same issue as ships like Scharnhorst, big hull, tiny gun. But in this case, small, tiny superstructure. Guns are about the same size as the entire superstructure, which is pretty much a standard for, let's just say, most of the Russian battleships. And it also has its own premium camo. But the thing is, in terms of consumables, you are stuck with the enhanced secondary targeting. Because first of all, this thing doesn't even have a catapult, meaning you can't equip a spotter nor a fighter plane. So overall, we've seen how Nikolai can perform, we've seen the upgrades, we've seen the commanders we could use, we've seen the armor layout, but how well does it play? Well, we're about to find out now. So, now we are on a map I barely even know exists, because I barely play this map, in the Nikolai. Now, Nikolai has powerful guns at tier 4, has powerful guns. And as you can see, this map tends to have people who rage a lot, me, and sometimes you get some imbeciles who try to smoke you up and while you're in a battleship, when in reality they're just making you blind. Now, Nikolai performs very decently in standard as well. In fact, last ranked season where we had tier 4 ranked, I used to take out Nikolai. But with a ship like this, with a giant citadel, it tends to get blapped a lot when it's broadside. But you can tank enough hits if you're bow tanking or you're angled. Do not over angle unless you want to get sent to Davy Jones' locker. Okay, so we have a Furitaka in one side and what I presume to be a König on the other side, and an Imperator 10. Now, granted, Imperator 10 French cruiser equals paper armor. Now, seeing that even just a slab of paper mache has thicker armor than the entire French cruiser line, you can see where this is going. So, as I'm about to turn around this particular island, which I prefer camping on when I play Wichita, when I commit the biggest sin known to mankind, and just sit there. Nikolai is a battleship, meaning you have to move. So, look at the damage that these guns can do, for example. And there's a shot, and one citadel. And activate the secondary batteries. Of course, because since the Imperator is far away from me, I could barely reach him. But I start turning to hit him, and I bag the kill. Then for the Furitaka, it's a different story. This is where I try to get the gameplay, and as I turn, so I can get my hands on another kill, so I can shoot Furitaka's broadside, I didn't realize Furitaka was already angled. So this led to possibly one of my biggest derp moments in all of World of Warships. Torpedoes passed by me, and this happened. That was unintended, and before you ask, yes, I do play versus AI when I do tutorials. Because versus AI seems a lot more simple, and you don't need to be a unicum to play any ship in the game. You don't need to be competitive to play World of Warships either. So, when it comes to tutorial recording, versus AI, I would go for. Standard, you can take this thing out in standard. This thing performs very well in standard. But when it comes to me personally, I prefer to play versus AI myself, because it's more fun and less toxic than you get some pig DMing you, calling you a noob and stuff like that. Even though he was the one in an emerald who got death struck. And this is where I lose it. Thankfully I didn't have my mic connected. But look at the points for the enemy team. They're at 45 because they haven't captured the zone. Obviously because this is against bots. And as I try to get that one kill, someone took it away from me. In conclusion, Nikolai, where do we go? So, great guns, average speed for your typical Russian battleship, and it has secondaries it can do well. It can brawl, you can play it to your own playstyle. So, Nikolai gets a 9 out of 10 for me. So, anyways, that's all I have to say. Good luck, and I will see you on the high seas.